Hello and welcome to Behind the Trend, where we bring you short stories, big insights. I'm Melissa. Tonight we take a closer look at something that's been quietly shaping conversations in global economics and geopolitics, Greenland. It's that vast, icy island that most of us think of as remote, untouched, and largely irrelevant to our daily lives. But what if I told you that Greenland, of all places, might hold a key to the next big economic tug-of-war between the United States and Europe? And what if I also told you it's not about buying or selling territory anymore, but about who controls the future of the Arctic itself? Let's explore what's really happening behind the scenes. For years, Greenland was more of a curiosity than a headline. Then came that now infamous idea that the US might actually buy it. At first, it sounded absurd. People laughed, made memes, brushed it off as one of those political quirks that fade by morning. But the truth? The conversation never really disappeared. It just changed shape. Instead of a purchase, the question became influence. Who gets to invest, to explore, to extract, and to decide what happens to the world's largest island? Because underneath all that, ice lies something extraordinary. Minerals, rare earths, critical metals used in everything from electric vehicles to smartphones. The kind of materials global powers are already competing for, sometimes quietly, sometimes not. Recent reports suggest that Washington has been doubling down on its Arctic presence. From military partnerships to trade frameworks, there's a push to make sure America doesn't fall behind. Not to China, not to Russia, and not to the European Union. For Denmark, which technically governs Greenland, this creates a complex dilemma. Copenhagen sees Greenland as part of its kingdom, but it also knows that the island's growing strategic value is attracting far more attention and far more pressure than ever before. Think about this. Greenland's population is barely 60,000, yet it's sitting on potential worth billions. It's melting. Ice sheets are opening new shipping routes, new oil prospects, and new geopolitical questions. And as the Arctic becomes more accessible, the world's superpowers are moving in one ship, one deal, one handshake at a time. Now, officially, Greenland has said it's not for sale, but that doesn't mean it's not for competition, because when territory becomes too important to buy, influence becomes the currency. And that's where the story takes a twist. The US has quietly expanded its diplomatic footprint in the Arctic. There are now more direct channels between Washington and Newark, Greenland's capital, than ever before. Greenland's leaders, meanwhile, have been navigating this carefully. They want development, but not domination. They want partnerships, but not dependency. It's a fragile balance, and it's made even trickier by Europe's growing unease. European economies, especially Denmark, are beginning to feel the ripple effects of US Arctic ambition. If Greenland starts leaning more toward Washington economically, that could shift trade flows, supply chains, and even regional security arrangements for Brussels. That's not just an economic issue, it's a strategic one. The Arctic is one of the last frontiers where Europe still feels it can project influence, losing ground. There could mean losing leverage in energy defense and environmental negotiations for decades to come. Meanwhile, for Washington, the timing couldn't be more calculated. The global race for clean energy has created an enormous appetite for rare minerals, and Greenland happens to have them in abundance. So while everyone's eyes are fixed on Middle Eastern oil or Asian manufacturing, the Arctic is quietly becoming the next stage for global competition. And here's where the economic angle deepens. Analysts say Greenland's mineral deposits, particularly rare earth elements, could rival some of the largest reserves in China. That's not just an economic opportunity, it's a strategic lifeline. Whoever controls access to those resources controls part of the world's technological future. So when American officials talk about Arctic investment or Arctic defense, it's not just about geography, it's about the materials that make your phone work, your car run your battery charge. That's why this story matters not just to politicians or investors, but to all of us. Now, let's take a step back and look at the broader picture. Why does Greenland matter so much right now? It's not just the minerals, it's the melting. As the planet warms, the Arctic is changing faster than any other region on Earth. That means previously unreachable areas are opening up. New trade routes could cut shipping times between continents by nearly half. Imagine a world where Arctic waters become as important as the Suez Canal or the Strait of Malacca. That's not science fiction, that's tomorrow's reality, and every country knows it. So Greenland becomes more than a frozen island. It becomes a stage one where climate, economics, and politics all collide. Denmark is trying to keep a steady hand, but it's not easy. Greenland's autonomy has grown steadily over the years, and the people there increasingly want a say in their future. They're aware of what's at stake: their land, their culture, their economy. They've seen what happens when small nations get caught between larger powers. In many ways, it's a familiar story. The struggle to define identity amid global pressure. Only this time, it's playing out on ice. Now, let's talk numbers for a moment. Experts estimate that developing Greenland's mineral resources could bring in tens of billions of dollars over the coming decades. For an island that has relied heavily on subsidies from Denmark, that kind of revenue could transform everything from healthcare to education to infrastructure. But here's the trade-off. Mining in Greenland isn't simple. The terrain is harsh, the ecosystem is fragile, and while development could bring wealth, it could also bring disruption. Environmentalists warn that rushing into extraction could irreversibly damage the Arctic's delicate balance, a region already struggling under climate stress. So Greenland finds itself caught in a rare kind of crossroads between prosperity and preservation, between independence and influence, between the old world and the emerging one. And in the background, the question lingers: who benefits most? Some say it's the US securing its strategic edge. Others believe Denmark might actually find itself sidelined by its own allies. And for Greenland's people, the ones living through these shifts, the answer isn't so simple. Every new deal, every new investment comes with both promise and pressure. Jobs, yes. Growth, yes. But also dependency risk and the possibility of being used as a pawn in a much larger geopolitical game. And while the world debates ownership and economics, Greenland's glaciers keep melting faster than expected, feeding rising seas that affect cities far beyond the Arctic Circle from New York to Mumbai. So perhaps the real story isn't about whether Greenland is for sale. It's about what we're all buying into when we treat the planet's last untouched regions as the next great frontier for profit. It's easy to frame this as politics. It's harder to see it as consequence. But think about this. When a place like Greenland enters the economic spotlight, it doesn't just reshape markets, it reshapes mindsets. It forces us to ask how far nations are willing to go for growth and at what cost. For now, both Washington and Copenhagen are playing cautious diplomacy. There's talk of joint ventures, sustainable development, and mutual respect. But history teaches us that when resources meet, ambition, cooperation has a way of turning into competition. So the question becomes, can Greenland develop on its own terms, or will it become the latest chapter in a long story of strategic tug-of-war? No one can say for sure, but one thing's certain: the island once dismissed as too remote, too cold, too empty has become central to a world that's heating up fast. And maybe that's the real irony. The colder Greenland gets politically, the hotter it becomes economically. The world is watching quietly, patiently, strategically, because what happens on that icy island could shape energy economics and alliances for generations. And as we wrap up tonight, let's remember this: Greenland may not be for sale, but its story, its future, and its influence are all being rewritten in real time. You've been watching Behind the Trend. I'm Melissa, and this has been Short Stories, Big Insights. Thank you for joining me. Good night.